Should be right to go now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody to the extraordinary meeting of Tuesday, the 23rd of March, 2021. Thank you for your attendance. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respect to elders past and present. This meeting is live streamed on Council's website to allow the community to follow Council debates and decisions. Members of the public participating in a meeting agree to have their image, voice and personal information, including name and address, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snowy Valley's Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of the meeting, and any part of the meeting that is held in closed session will not be streamed. Please ensure all mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and no recording of voice or images is permitted. In the event of emergency, please evacuate using the nearest exit. Council is currently operating under the temporary provisions of Section 447A of the Local Government Act, which allows for online meetings, and the provision of the Act takes precedence over any conflicts with the adopted Snowy Valleys Council Code of Meeting Practice. Thank you. Councillors, apologies and leave of absence. I've got an apology from Councillor Kate Cross for this meeting. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Benjamin, Councillor Wright, all in favour of accepting that apology? That's unanimous, thank you. Declarations of pecuniary interests? There's none, thank you. There's no late reports. Governance and final finance.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, sorry, there is a late report 5.2. And that's the draft long-term financial plan report 2021 to 2031 and draft sustainability plan 2021. The late attachments are being deemed to be of an urgent nature and be received and dealt with.
Okay, do we need a motion for that to accept those?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mover, Councillor Lata, Councillor Smith. Any discussion? Put the motion, all in favour of accepting? It's unanimous, thank you. Excuse me. Councillors, that brings us to 5.1, draft 2021 integrated planning and reporting documents, public exhibition. Do I have a mover for those? Councillor Ham, Councillor Lada. I might ask the CEO to give a brief overview and then I suggest that we move into committee. So I'll need a mover for that, but I'll ask the CEO first. Thank you. Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's meeting is about adopting our operational plan and budget and all the associated documents. The 2021 to 2022 operational plan and budget sets out our coming year's actions and budget. The draft plan contains 112 actions and $73 million budget, of which $35.4 million is to be invested in capital works, including $13.6 million investment into our transport network. As an overview, Council's financial planning addresses our financial resources and our impact on Council's ability to fund its services and capital works. There is a deficit before capital grants, which indicates Council's inability to self-fund capital renewal and Council's reliance on external funding for these. Our budget position reflects Council's focus on continuing to deliver services to the community at the levels that the community expect. Our capital grant income expenditure reflects the income expenditure for renewal, upgrade and building of our assets, and our capital income includes external grant funding. There are two operating results. The operating result excluding capital grants. This is simply the operating income less the operating expenditure. The result tells us whether Council's operational activities are fully funded by operational income. This is currently not the case. The operating result including capital grants. This reflects whether Council is dependent on capital funding to cover its ongoing capital renewal. Capital funding is received to fund capital expenditure, which is separate from Council's operational budget. In this budget proposal, we also have a proposal to consult on a special rate variation, and the long-term financial plan includes Council's preferred option with an SRV from the 22-23 budget. Without an SRV and or cuts to council services, council's forecast budget deficits for the next 10 years and beyond. Considerable operational efficiencies resulting in savings are required in addition to the SRV to make council financially sustainable into the long run. Council will continue to rely on an additional external grant income, although to a lower degree in this option. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Hyde. Councillors, can I have a mover to move into committee? Councillor Benjamin, Councillor Lata, all in favour? It's unanimous, thank you. Who would like to go first? Do I have a mover to move out of committee? No. Councillor Smith, thank you. On mute, Councillor Smith.
I would like to extend our thanks to the Chief Executive Officer and all of the staff who have put so much work and effort into preparing these documents. I think that not many people would be able to envisage the work that has gone into actually preparing these documents. And I know that we have been talking about this for some time now and have had a number of workshops to put all of this together and to, I guess, gather in the information supplied to us by the staff. So I really want to give recognition to that. And I also want to encourage all of our people in our area, in our region, to closely look at these documents. There are many hundreds of pages, in fact, of documents to look at, and to go over them and to really think about what it is that we're putting forward here, and to give any feedback that they may have to assist us when we look back again at these documents once public exhibition has been completed, so that we can put forward and in fact vote on some really good measures to take our council into a sustainable and a bright future. So I think it's really important to stress that we need our constituents to actually give us feedback on these documents.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, and well said. Certainly, do we have any specific questions regarding the operational plan, budget, etc.? Well, I have one to the CFO. Given the amount of money that we've got invested, have we got a clue of how much we will actually have in the budget from interest from those funds that are invested for the year?
We do have a reasonable idea. At the moment, we're returning just above 1% on our investments, and we'll update you at the QBR3 on what we expect at the end of the year.
Thank you very much. So 1% we can work on.
At the moment, that is what we can deliver, yes.
Thank you. Councillors, other questions? Councillor Pritchard, microphone's off. Microphone's still off, Councillor Pritchard. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, the thing that worries me is the special rate variation. Normally, a special rate variation is something for a specific purpose, and it only goes for as long as it takes to fulfil that purpose, and then it reverts. It's not something that's inbuilt into your long-term planning. Could you give me a bit more detail about the proposed SVC.
SRV, hand over to the CEO.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Pritchard, there's in the long-term financial plan, there's three proposals. So, and Council's recommending going with the option 2. So, the first option is a baseline scenario, which is continuing what we're currently doing. And what we're saying around that is that that's not sustainable. And even with implementation of a sustainability plan, creating a lot of internal savings, the fees and charges will increase in line with the CPI, and there'll be a cumulative deficit of $35 million over the next 10 years. And cash holdings will be depleted to below the allowable restricted cash levels. And there's an inability to fund required infrastructure renewals. So that's under the business as usual. Council's preferred option that we've got in this report is a 25% special rate variation, which we're calling the SRV scenario, and that SRV would kick in from the 1st of July 2022. The 25% special rate variation will be implemented over a 2-year period, and it requires increases to the fees and charges based on community acceptance of user pays, required savings in all expenditure lines with some moderate service level adjustments as per the sustainability plan, returns operational to profitable territory within the 10-year forecast period, and it has a reduced reliance on additional capital income from state and federal sources. There is a third option, which we're calling the optimistic scenario, and that is for a 10% special rate variation from the 1st of July 2022, and it assumes considerable additional operational funding from state and federal government, higher fees and charges, major service reductions resulting in reduction in operational expense lines, and a break even over the 10-year forecast. So like many other councils have had approved in their SRV application in recent times, it has been around sustainability of the operations, and it is intended that there'll be a 12% and a slightly more than 12% in year 2, and that money will be retained into the future. So that 25% overall under the SRV scenario would be ongoing. So in the past, some councils have had an SRV in place for a period of time and it's dropped off. So the former Shire SRV dropped off a year ago, and there were savings to the rates line in the order of $650,000. This is intended to continue forever, but we do have to go through a process of community engagement to see whether the community is willing and able to pay for that SRV, and that comes back to a service level discussion as well. So that consultation will happen. Council will have to lodge its application to IPART in November after it's done that consultation, and then IPART consider that, and then Council is able, if IPART agree to that, to implement that from the following financial year, so the 2022-23 financial year.
In what way is it different to rate pegging?
So the rate pegging is set at 2% currently. So what Council's got in this budget is the 2% rate peg in there to the maximum value. But as you would know from our discussions in workshop, things like the emergency services levy are well outside that 2%. The growth in wages, the competition currently to have capital works done, all of the contractors are busy and there's higher prices coming in. So our percentage growth is well beyond that 2%. However, it is important to note that part of our documentation here is a sustainability plan that actually demonstrate a number of different actions that Council itself will be doing a whole lot of processes, continuing those from previous years and making a more concerted effort in some areas to actually create some savings internally. But we can only do that so far if Council and the community wish to maintain the service level. So the other options basically include a service level reduction, a using up of our cash, getting into a position that is not sustainable into the future. So we're asking council to take on and consult with the community about making an informed decision to early enter into a process that keeps us as a sustainable organisation, providing great level of service to our community.
Councillor Wright.
It sounds to me then that if we want to keep our parks and gardens, in particular sporting grounds, everything looking as good as they do and maintained as well as they are, bicycle tracks and the works, we really don't have much choice.
Thanks, Councillor Wright. Councillor Risselman.
Mr. Mayor, I understand that levels of depreciation that we have to take into consideration on everything that council has an ownership of is quite high, and the level of depreciation required is imposed upon us by state and federal government. Is there any chance we are able to lobby for that depreciation level to be reduced?
I'll hand over to the Chief Financial Officer on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There is, this is not set by the government or federal or state. It is set by the Australian Accounting Board, and there is unfortunately no way that we can lobby to change that. What we can do is assess each asset for the best way to depreciate it and for the most efficient way to depreciate it, but we cannot go against the legislation.
And of course, the more assets we own, the more depreciation we are due.
Certainly. Now, depreciation is a concept that it is probably poorly understood in the wider population. It actually is a proxy for the using up of an asset. So you capitalize an asset at the beginning, and then you use it up over the term of its life. So it's actually a valid concept that you are using an asset that you have built and not actually expensed at the beginning. But as I said, Australian accounting standards are set, and lobbying for those is probably outside of our remit.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you. And thanks for the question, Councillor Risselman. You have another question?
A comment only, Mr. Mayor. Many people who own their own homes wouldn't appreciate the fact that depreciation of your home ends up with nothing when you own it fully outright.
Well,
council goes a different way.
Depreciation in a normal business is possibly a tax advantage for a lot of people, but whereas depreciation for a council is a liability. Councillor Ham, did you have something to add? No, Councillor Larter.
I was just going to draw the community's attention to the sporting fees and charges in particular, just because there was a lot of well, I won't say criticism, but essentially what happened in the last 12 months was council had raised those fees to be in line with the previous Tumbarumba Council's chain of fees for our sporting codes to use our parks and gardens on an ongoing basis. So what essentially has occurred to adjust that, which Tumbarumba I think will find very good for their end, is that we've met in the middle on that, and we've charged I think it's $500 or thereabouts for the majority of venues, for the pony clubs, for the soccer clubs. That's across the board, and I think that's a fair fee, and it encourages local sport for kids and for adults socially. So I think it's a great thing for us to subsidise.
Thank you, Councillor Larter. Any other councillors? Councillor Risselman again.
I thought you might say that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The fees and charges on sporting fields, are they determined by how high the fee is charged, by whether the actual sporting facility has food outlets at the time of usage? And if so, have those particular activities been investigated fully before the charges have been put on the individual sporting groups?
I might ask the CEO to direct that question.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just direct that question to the Executive Director, Infrastructure Services, Heinz Korsch.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Isselman. I suppose the simple response is no. The charge is related to recovering part of the cost for looking after the playing fields. So if clubs are able to, include kiosks and get income off that, that's great for them. But for us, it's really just about trying to recover part of the cost for looking after those fields and maintaining those surfaces to a high level.
Thank you. Councillor Ham.
I'd just like to ask a few specific things. I'd like to ask about the local recovery plan 1.6.5. What does that mean? I know it's through the LMEC, but exactly what is that meaning? And then further on from that, I'd like to ask about Rotary Place, the retirement village and Snowview, and what is the plan for the next 12 months?
We'll start with the first one. CEO.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that question. I'll hand that across to the Executive Director, Corporate and Community.
Now, I'm sorry, I just missed that question. If I could have it again.
I'm just wondering about 1.6.5, the local recovery plan with the LMEC, and if you could just explain what that is and what, this time next year, what will we have? And then I'll ask you another question after that.
Right. The local recovery plan, I believe, is a plan that we put together in advance of experiences like we just had with the bushfires that were had in 2019, 2020. So it sort of puts together a plan that details, who does what at what time and a time frame over which we can expect to recover following, any sort of event of that nature.
I suppose that's why I'm asking is, it hasn't finished. The council is still working towards recovery and are we still being funded for this, or now does it turn into council funding things?
So right now we are still receiving funding for recovery activities. We have a community recovery officer on board. They are currently funded until the end of June 2021. Representation has been made by the Canberra Regional Joint Organisation of Councils to extend that funding for another 2 years in the affected municipalities. But we haven't got confirmation of that at this point in time. So recovery initiatives still continue, and there are a range of players and agencies undertaking that recovery work. And post June 30, 2021, should no more funding be received for continuation of that work, the recovery activities will be integrated more into our community development and our place activation roles, so that we can continue to support people and try and assist the municipality to get back to where it was pre-disaster through initiatives ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. Holton. And if you just stay on screen, I think the second one comes to you as well, Councillor Ham.
I just was wanting just a 12 months, what's planned to be achieved with the Snowview Estates, the Retirement Village and Rotary Place, particularly I think Snowview, because I imagine that it is on the move.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Snowview Estate, I'm very pleased to say, that project is progressing, with the DA application currently being assessed by an independently employed DA assessment officer. At the same time, the project scope is being developed so that it may be, we can procure a contractor to undertake a design and construct project to deliver that project. So we would be hoping, I suppose I'd be very optimistic that the DA will be assessed and ready to go by the middle of the year. And if we do the procurement alongside that process, we should be in a position to let a contract for a design and construct, which would see the design occur in the winter with construction beginning and in the spring.
And the construction is of all the footpaths of the curbing and all
Civil
that.
works, that would include all the civil works, drainage, reticulation of water, reticulation of electricity, reticulation of communications, all those sorts of.
And you don't think council will be able to do that? That will have to be outsourced?
The decision has been made. There's internally, there are council's works crew has plenty of projects to go on with. This particular project is better to be done as a design and construct. It's more efficient and more effective because the basic design documentation has already been achieved. So it's just a matter of ground truthing what that was and then developing up the specific detailed designs so that then the construction can occur. And that is the most efficient way of us delivering this project.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Holt. And Rotary Place was the third question.
Yep.
Well, Rotary Place, Rotary Place is the, I guess, supported accommodation. It's not the independent living units. So Rotary Place, the plan is just to continue to deliver that service through 2021, 2022 and ongoing. There are no plans for extending or upgrading that at this point in time.
And what about the independent living?
At this stage,
anything
we're
there?
not budgeting to build any more independent living units at this stage. I believe what we will be doing is undertaking some investigations as to a business case around the provision of that. But I guess the thing that needs to be considered here is whether the private sector is better placed to deliver those sorts of facilities. They deliver those sort of independent living units in other places, not just apart from Tumbarumba. So it may be worth evaluating how much council can sustainably continue to be involved or develop those sorts of initiatives, because they do come at a cost.
Thank you, Mr. Holt.
Yeah. So are you thinking that it might be something that we sell to a private operator? Is that what you're meaning, or just in the construct?
Well, what I'm suggesting is that the private sector often meets that sort of demand because they can construct it and do things in ways that council can't, and they should be, in all these sorts of initiatives. The question should be asked whether the private sector is better positioned to deliver that service than council. Given council's got a finite and very limited capacity to raise funds and a lot of commitments in terms of service levels and a very broad and diverse portfolio of services they need to deliver, it's always best to maintain, I think, what's called a restless eye for the public good. And that includes, consideration of when and where council should be involved in delivering those sorts of services.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just got a couple of questions. I'll start with the operational plan 1.6.1. Can I just get an update on where we're at with the crime prevention plan, please?
Through the chair, Councillor Benjamin, the crime prevention plan has been adopted. It's got a number of actions in it. And this item under the operational plan talks about advocating to have those actions in place, because a lot of those actions listed in the crime prevention plan need associated funding with it. Part of doing the plan was to have the strategic planning document that allowed us to apply for funding for that, or community groups. So I'm already aware that the Adelong Progress Association is using the crime prevention plan to make application for their town centre to do some improvements to help improve the safety of people in the main street.
Beautiful, thank you. And my question number 2 is just some clarification for the community on in the operational plan of 1.7.4. I'm all for getting younger community members into apprenticeships and traineeships, but do we know what positions will be available in regards to those 1.7.4?
Through the chair, Councillor Benjamin, yes, we do have a very strong entry-level program, and when we did the organisation structure last year, we went through that and actually outlined what those positions are over a 3-year period, and have investing $500,000 into that. So next year we have specific positions that we'll be targeting. We have employed quite a few people locally recently, and towards the end of the year, we will start our advertising for next year's program so that we pick up the graduates from school at the end of the year, but also we try and match into the university year. So some of these courses around engineering and environmental health and planning actually have different start dates. We try to capture those people where they're at the point in their training that it is appropriate for them to come and work for us, and we assist them with that training, and hopefully they stay in our community and assist us to deliver those services to our community.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Benjamin. Anything further, Councillor Ham?
I just want to go to the budget and the operational budget, CB05, is we're getting solar panels on the roof in Tumbarumba, which is excellent, thank you. Just wondering, what sort of saving does that get? Like, it's $24,000 in the budget. Do we save $24,000 within a year, or what's the life on when we get that $24,000 back, which I presume is what will happen?
Through the chair, I'll hand that across to the Executive Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Koush.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Ham. Yeah, it's variable depending on what rebates you get feeding back into the network. So it's hard for me to say exactly what that return is, what the payback is. But normally we'd be trying to get the payback over half, probably a handful of years, thereabouts.
Oh,
so yeah, it just depends. There's a whole lot of variables in there, so it's really hard to give you exact numbers on that, except that the intention is, yes, to get that payback, get it back as quick as we can. Yeah, and hopefully that would be in that 6, 7, 8 year sort of mark.
And so it makes financial sense, doesn't it? And the other thing, I might as well keep you there through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay. I note that the Orney Hall, which was burnt down, and I know that the locals have lobbied very hard for that. Though I'm a bit astounded that it's coming out at $800,000. Just want to make sure that's all through grant funding, and just what's happening there.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Ham, yeah, very much fully funded. No cost no capital cost to council. And another example of utilising solar panels as efficient as possible.
Heinz, you're just cutting out, so if you can just speak a bit louder into your mic, that'd be great. Thanks.
Do I need to repeat that, or is that?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, in regard to Orney Hall, completely externally funded, the capital works, which is fantastic. And the design is very much focused on being very self-sufficient in regard to energy consumption. So it includes solar panels and a whole lot of other energy efficient devices, which would be great.
Great outcome.
Thank you. Councillor Isselman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 questions on the IPA. The first one, I wondered if someone could actually give me a very brief understanding of 34.4 integrated water cycle management strategies, and if that does that strategy include the volume of water that's there in storage for the supply to various communities?
I'd say that's Mr. Corsh.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Isselman, yes, very much. It includes water, sewerage. It also includes stormwater, and very much takes into consideration the availability of water in the catchments, and drought tolerance, drought resistance.
So there will, in that strategy, there will be a view to taking a look at the Batlow Dam water resource for a
most definitely.
Fantastic. Yes. That's excellent. I'm really pleased about that.
Critical part of the IWCM.
Fantastic. The second one, my question is probably to you again, Mr. Cush, but through you, Mr. Mayor. The weed action plan, I noticed there's quite a lot of consultation and meetings and so on, but the finances of actually eradicating weeds in the council area has not increased, if at all. Are we facing this particular problem in the correct manner? Do you feel we've got more room to move to get more finances to eradicate, particularly, of course, blackberries?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Isselman, yes, and Mr. Holton will be able to help out with responding to this, in that we have been successful in securing some funding to do some weed eradication works, as it has become a high focus following the fires, and I might let Paul take it from there.
Mr. Holton.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Council is very successful at actually achieving funding to tackle weeds. And we probably have been able to secure more funding than a lot of other municipalities for that purpose over a fairly long period of time. Unfortunately, the size of the problem is far greater than any sorts of funding that we can possibly source to actually make huge inroads into, say, eradication of weeds like blackberries in particular. We were very fortunate in achieving $150,000 worth of funding to deal with a lot of the weeds that have started to grow up with the removal of a lot of the roadside vegetation, which has created a huge opportunity for the weeds to just take over. So we've got about $150,000 there to start working on minimising the impact of those weeds. Now, I say minimise the impact of those weeds is because that's all we can possibly hope to do with even $150,000. But there is a plan. You know, we do target particular weeds that are, I guess, nominated by our partners in the state government, as well as attempt to deal with particular areas where there are gross infestations of weeds, particularly like blackberries. And we have had a crack at some of the blackberries this year, particularly the ones that have been springing up in the areas adjacent to the burnt out forests, which have largely been removed. So the blackberries have sprung up a lot there. I don't personally have the greatest understanding of the dynamics of weed eradication, but my overall understanding is that we have a program, the Weed Action Plan, which we deliver pretty well in partnership with other agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Holton. I might also direct you to the fact that African lovegrass and Chilean needlegrass are causing some concern along the roads. So just note that. Councillor Isselman, do you have another question?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's fine.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from the councillors? Do we have someone to move back? Oh, Councillor Ham, you're moving out of committee?
I'm afraid
you have
not.
another question. Thank you.
I just have to
Go
ask
ahead.
the annual question about swimming pools to, if it's all right with you, Mr. Mayor, to the CFO. I noticed that we're running at a loss of $914,000 predicted for swimming pools. If we were, if we were to reinstate fees, what difference would that make? Guesstimate.
Questions directed to the CFO, I believe.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ham. I will have to take that question on notice.
Sorry, I should have.
The current income is approximately the same it was when the entry fees were abandoned. So we have made up some of the losses through other streams of income, but how much exactly a reinstatement would give us, I would have to calculate first.
Oh, okay. So but I do get that we're still bringing that. Sorry, we're still bringing in the same sort of income that we had when we charged fees, but because of the swipe card and because of the charges for usage and things like that, we're pretty well plateauing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Ham, yes, that is correct. It's also through additional sales through the kiosks. There's a number of aspects to the swimming pools.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Ham, as I understand it, when I've got some feedback. Have you got feedback there? Are you getting feedback, Mr. CEO?
Yes, we are getting a little bit of feedback. I've just muted everyone, so we'll see how we go.
My understanding is that when we got rid of fees, we were the income coming through was 133,000. The document that we have in front of us has the income at now 139,000. So we've stopped collecting money at the gate for people entering, but we have increased the income by $6,000 over the 4 years, and that's basically through increased usage, the swipe card access fees, and swimming lessons, and of course the canteen sales. So in effect, it's proven that we can we haven't run it at the predicted loss.
Great outcome. Thank you.
Councillor Isselman, you're muted.
And if I might just comment on Councillor Ham's question, Mr. Mayor, there's no way of putting a dollar fee on the social outcomes that we've got by having the pools open. The amount of positive outcomes for the use of the pools right across our shire, having them free on the holiday times and in the summertime is immeasurable, and it's a wonderful outcome.
And crime rate has decreased.
So it's a bit like the solar panels. The pools are only used much when the sun's out. So a bit like the solar panels, Councillor Ham. Do we have any other questions? Do we have somebody to move back? Councillor Larder, Councillor Ham, all in favour? That's unanimous. So, councillors, we have the recommendation there that council receive the report. There's 1 and 2, and 2 has A to E. Mr. Hyde.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, if the movers and seconders, Councillor Ham and Councillor Larder, would be willing, I suggest that in 3B, currently states draft 2021-22 fees and charges schedule. And can I just say we've tabled an amended version to councillors today and gone through that in detail with the councillors in the workshop, and we will upload the amended version to the website. So if I can just add the as tabled at the meeting to the end of that sentence, if the movers and seconders are willing to do that.
Councillor Ham? Councillor Ham, are you happy with that?
I'm just thinking. I did. Sorry. I just wondering whether we should just discuss that sustainability document. I didn't realise I'd only got to the operational plan. I suppose Matt really did talk about it. Yeah.
I'm about to put the motion. Are you happy with that amendment that the CEO just spoke about?
Yes, I'm very happy with that. Yes.
Okay. Anything further? Did you want to? Who was the mover?
The mover was Councillor Ham and the seconder was Councillor Larder.
Did you want to close debate, Councillor Ham?
I just would like to bring people's attention to Snorri, the document, the sustainability plan, the Snorri Valleys Council Road to Sustainability Plan, March 2021. I think with anyone who runs a business, sooner or later you just have to step up and say, if we keep going this way, we're going to be in trouble. And some of the things in there I've really struggled with, and particularly I have a lot of trouble with the fact that it's we have to be careful of the grants we apply for, because if we get our assets are too high, our depreciation is high and we end up with a greater loss. That's taken me a long time to really understand that council process. So that's one of the, I think this document is very thoughtful. I appreciate that we've been through it, well, 3 times really, to go through it and look at how we can remain sustainable. I've talked to lots of other councils across the board. Councils are really struggling at the moment. And I do like the fact that we're looking to start lobbying to just say, we can't have this cost shifting and remain viable. So I do support the sustainability plan and invite anyone to come and chat to me about it, because I think the decisions made in that are very prudent.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. In fact, they can chat to any councillor if they wish. I'll put the motion. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr. CEO, there is a 5.2 late report.
Putting that up on the screen, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'm not aware of that document.
I can't find it.
So we did have a late attachment, but that's included in the document.
So nothing further for. We've got nothing further for the council meeting.
CFO.
Yes, thank you. So Mr. Mayor, 5.2 was purely the upload of the late attachments to 5.1.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes our meeting.
Correct.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your attendance.